Well, hello. I've gotten the sign. I think we're live. Hi, I'm Amos, and this is my colleague Geert, and we're here at the Moog Sound Lab. Haven't done a live stream like this in a little while, so could use a drink of water. At any rate, good morning, especially on the West Coast where it's bright and early. We're here today because we have a significant new update to the Moog One firmware. We're at version 1.1 now, and we're continuing in our process of building out this instrument to be the best that it can possibly be. And we're constantly listening to user feedback. We're working with people one-on-one and gathering all of the ideas and inspirations that Moog One users have, and using that as a part of our design process to build a better instrument. So that's an ongoing process. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to keep building this thing out into the fully realized vision that it continues to be. And in this installment, we've added a bunch of new features and enhancements, and we're going to spend the next hour going through that, demonstrating and describing everything that we've done to get you caught up to speed. And then in the next hour, we have a special guest, Lisa Bella Donna, here, who is an amazing synthesist and musician, and she's going to be demonstrating a collection of new classic-sounding presets for the Moog One that also ships with this update. It includes 50 new presets that are totally amazing, but rather than talk about them, we're going to bring out Lisa. She's going to play them for you and let her performance do the talking about the presets. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be fun. And for now, let's dive in, and we'll go over the updates to the Moog One. So in version 1.1, a lot of the updates are to the MIDI system. And this is something that's been, we shipped the Moog One with a certain amount of MIDI functionality, and we've had a whole roadmap of all of the cool stuff that we were going to add, and we're now, part of the way, a significant part of the way through that. Yeah. So the number one thing probably that people were asking for and will notice about this is MIDI learn. So all of the front panel parameters that control analog, that control parameters per voice, all the front panel controls that control analog parameters can be mapped to any MIDI control number that you want to send to it. And it has an automatic learn facility that lets you, from your software or your hardware or whatever controller that's sending MIDI, you can select a parameter, send the MIDI control, and the Moog One creates that mapping. And you can save those mappings, you can edit them and fine-tune them. And that allows you to have really expressive control using a whole host of other controllers outside the Moog One, be it software or be it additional hardware. Like, for example, the Linstrument that Geert has brought, and we also have a controller. I'll slow down. Okay, so there are a few different kinds of MIDI control that we've implemented on the Moog One. The most straightforward is what's called NRPN control. And NRPN stands for non-registered parameter number. It's a part of the MIDI specification. Long story short, what it is it's a group of about 16,000 high-resolution controllers that you're free to use, that manufacturers are free to use for anything. There's no, there's no rules about what you can map them to any parameters that you want. So we have created a dedicated mapping where for every parameter that you can control, there's a fixed number. You can send that controller number, and it's always going to control the parameter that it's associated with, and that's built in. It's always there. And the really nice thing about that is that you have such high resolution control over all of the parameters. And we have, I guess we can jump right into showing that. Yeah. We've built Geert has built a control panel using software called MIDI Designer, which is very cool. And I'll let you describe what you've done and how it works.
So while we developed that NRPN control, we discovered there's so many parameters to actually map and test. And the most straightforward way of doing that was to, in parallel, build out a virtual panel on an iPad in this case.
We might need to move the iPad over to where the overhead shot can see it. I'm not sure how that lines up. I'm sure if it's near the screen, then it's probably...
So we basically took the front panel of the Moog One went through each individual control and created a virtual version of it so that we can test it, but also show what the possibilities are. So this is done in an application called MIDI Designer Pro that allows you to freely create whatever kind of control surface you would want to have on your iPad, and it has NRPN support. So what is really nice about the NRPN support is that you don't have to go through the process of assigning the control to the parameter that it will be controlling on the Moog One. Each particular NRPN number has a dedicated parameter that it's tied to, and it is for each individual synth. So for each parameter, you basically have 3 numbers that correspond to the 3 synths so that you have access to them immediately. As a demo, let's go, and you also get visual feedback. That's what I'm going to do now. So let's go to the filter module here. And this particular sound has got the stage variable filter set up. It's mixed all the way in without any ladder filter. And this SVF cutoff NRPN that you can see here is a knob, virtual knob, that will send out the NRPN number that is appropriate. So as I touch this and drag it, you can see it update. The sound changes and the UI changes corresponding way. Similar for mix, so you can see. And so on for all the parameters, the knobs and the buttons on the front panel that control analog sound parameters. Additionally, NRPN can also be sent out by the front panel. So initially when we shipped version 1.0 of the Moog One firmware, we had one particular arrangement for sending out CC messages from the front panel. It wasn't responding to CC messages, it was tightly mapping specific CC numbers to the position of the knobs. If you then go to settings now in version 1.1, you will see that in the MIDI control category, we now have a new option that is MIDI control output. And by default, it will be set to CC, which is the way it has been behaving since version 1.0. Now, we have 2 additional options, and the one we're now talking about is the NRPN option, which means that as you control, you touch the knobs on the Moog One or the switches or the buttons, it will send out that NRPN number that corresponds to that particular control on the front panel, just in the same way as it will be receiving it. So we were controlling the state variable filter cutoff parameter, which I can now also control from the front panel, and you can see that the virtual panel actually updates with the same NRPN number. So that's that about NRPN.
Okay. While we're on the MIDI control menu, we'll talk about the other things here. We've added Learn MIDI CC and Edit MIDI mapping, and that's for the next flavor of MIDI control, which is the MIDI Learn and freely assigning regular CC numbers. And unlike NRPNs, they've been around for 30 years, they're very useful, but not every piece of hardware and software makes it easy to work with them. Like a lot of sequencers that you would use on your computer, it's much easier, or indeed often it's the only option, to use regular MIDI CCs. That's totally fine. You can freely map those to the Moog One. I'm going to pause for just a moment because we had a question come in. Someone out there in the world wants to know if the Moog One can respond to polyphonic aftertouch. And the answer to that one is not yet, but as I was describing earlier, we have a roadmap, we have a sort of a larger vision of all of the MIDI control that we would like to support. And with such an amazing polyphonic synthesizer, obviously polyphonic aftertouch is not something that we failed to consider. It's involved. Supporting that on 8 to 16 independent analog subsystems, essentially, and having it coordinate with notes as they come in so that when you play a note and you're doing poly aftertouch, everything is, all the correct voices are modulating in musical harmony. That is coming, but that's not included in this particular update. So it's, we're incrementally building out the system. Poly aftertouch is on the roadmap, and we will get there, and it's going to be amazing. But for now, what we have is MIDI CC Learn. And yes?
just one of the reasons why MIDI CC learn is so convenient and important is that we only have a limited amount of CC numbers that we can work with. And the Moog One has so many parameters that it quickly became obvious that we couldn't create a fixed mapping.
Yeah, it was completely impossible. I mentioned that there are something like 16,000 individual NRPN controller numbers. So that's, that's 16,000 parameters that you can control independently. With MIDI CCs, it's more like 60 or 70 or something like that. There's less than 100 that are freely available to use, and that's not even enough to control the parameters of one of the 3 synths in the Moog One. So that's why mapping allows you to pick the parameters that you personally want to control, and it's always up to you. Like, I have these 100 parameters are the ones that I really care about right now, or even 2 or 3. But the point is, it's easy to pick what you care about musically, assign controls to that, because with MIDI CCs, they can't encompass everything simultaneously. So you get to choose what you want to control. And here's how you do that. So you go to the settings menu, and under MIDI control, Learn MIDI CC gets you into the MIDI Learn functionality. So you press the encoder, and you'll see a new screen. This is designed to be very similar to, if you're familiar with how the Moog One assigns modulations, controllers or mod sources to destinations, it's a similar idea. So you're prompted to turn a knob or press a button to choose the parameter that you want to select. And so
what are we going to use? Are you going to do?
That's a good question. Well, you've got, the instrument is hooked up right now.
It is hooked up, yeah.
Okay. Let's go ahead and do that, because that's very fun. This is an example of a performance controller where the controller gives you more dimensions of expressive control, and this is how you choose what you want to express, what parameter you want to manipulate as a part of your performance. So take it away.
Just as before, we have the state variable filter cutoff that does something interesting on this particular sound. So we touch the knob, wiggle it a little bit. So it has learned that control parameter is going to be state variable filter cutoff. And now it's listening to a MIDI CC number. So on the instrument, I'm going to assign that to the y-axis, which means that I move my finger up and down. I disabled the CC message initially. Now I only enabled the y-axis so that it's really clear to the Moog One which CC message it will receive. If you have a controller that sends out a bunch of CC messages at the same time, it can be confusing for you, because it really depends on which the first CC message is that arrives at the Moog One. So in order to make that deterministic, I only turned on one CC message on the instrument, which is the CC message for the y-axis. And so as I touch the instrument now, you can see that it sent out MIDI CC number 74, and the Moog One has learned it. When I press done, I can control that filter cutoff with my finger. And if you go to the panel, you can see that actually. And by the way, you're still able to control the panel with the front panel knobs at the same time. Everything works simultaneously, meaning that you can do.
Yeah, just gives you more simultaneous dimensions of control.
And so we're not limited to one MIDI learned parameter. So the one I just touched, which was the amplifier envelope sustain amount, we can, for instance, map that to the pressure of the instrument. So I disabled the Y control now so that it's going to be easy again to learn it. Going to the MIDI control category, learn MIDI CC, touch that sustain amount for the amplifier envelope, and press on the pad. And now you can see that it learned MIDI controller 11. If I now enable both of the controllers on the instrument, I can so there you go. Very convenient control over your sound with any controller that is able to send out MIDI CC messages, which are a lot of controllers.
Yes. Yeah, so this really, and especially like if you're on stage and you use, there are some people who have like a Wii controller hooked up to their microphone and they're doing like, crazy modulations, hands-free while they're performing. This allows the Moog One to respond to any kind of creative performance-enhancing MIDI control that you want to do. All right, we've got a couple more questions that have come in. One of them is individual panning control for each voice a part of the future roadmap? And MIDI control generally does, one of the places where there's room for improvement, and I think I can say that this is coming in MIDI 2.0, is per note control. You know, all of the parameters that you have per instrument, there's a per note version of it in MIDI 2.0. MIDI 1.0, the only version of MIDI that anybody can use right now, does not as easily support per note control of every parameter. So individual panning control per voice, I guess what I would say is there are different ways that you could do that. Some of them are better or more musically useful than others. I do think that per voice control generally is a powerful feature that I would like to see fully embodied in the Moog One. We're going to have to see what the roadmap looks like, you know, what the technology will allow. I would say yes. As the way the question was asked, is it a part of the future roadmap? The answer is yes. The exact particulars are to be determined, but we agree that's an important and awesome feature.
And not only pan control, like
right.
Like selectable control over the sound parameters.
Right,
that are
right. Ultimately, ultimately, each voice is an entire analog synthesizer, and all of those parameters of each individual voice have independent existence, so they can be independent of each other theoretically. Fully supporting that is a goal. The next question is microtonal scales. Mm-hmm. Will we ever have them? Oh, yes, we will. There's an entire tuning UI, an entire tuning architecture and system that has been planned and built in. You know, it's been planned since before the Moog One physically existed. We always wanted microtonal and alternative and non-Western scales on this incredible analog instrument. It is coming. Someday will come, and it's going to be amazing. I'm really excited about that feature. It's one of my personal favorites that I'm looking forward to.
Well, we've in fact started working on it, and it's
awesome.
Ongoing. So
so we can say that that is in development. Yeah. That's actually being worked on right now. Okay, some more questions. Any update on recording step automation and hearing the changes live?
Also working on it right now.
Yep, that's our best people are on that.
Yep.
And will the MIDI CC mapping be saved per preset?
No, the MIDI CC mapping currently are saved globally. However, in this current 1.1 version, there's only one set of CC mappings. For a future update, and we're also already working on that, you'll be able to save multiple ones and name them, load them, but also export and import them. So share them with people, like share your favorite mappings for your favorite controllers and devices.
Precisely.
Yeah.
All right. One thing I wanted to mention, since we've been showing the SVF, we've been showing the filter more page in some of these demos, is that you may notice that it looks a little different now. Mm-hmm. We've added, there are and have always been actually 2 state variable filter sections in the Moog One per voice, and the spacing control, which is on the more page, controls how far apart the 2 cutoffs of the 2 different SVFs are. And previously, we only showed one little graphic representing the SVF, and now we show both of the filter cutoffs of the 2 resonant state variable filters, so that it's easy to see what they're doing relative to each other. You get a nice graphical representation of the sonic effect of having 2 filters.
Yep.
So that's a little quiet. Anyway, so just a nice little graphical enhancement.
This one.
Oh, of course, yeah, we turned.
Because I controlled this from the instrument, and as you release your finger, it reduces like the value of that CC message.
Yeah, one for people that are playing with this at home, it can, when you send a MIDI control to a parameter, that value that the controller asserts sticks around, it persists. So if you turn down the master volume on your MIDI controller and then you've got no sound, you're like, oh gosh, why do I have no sound?
We just had that happen.
Yeah, we literally, as we were setting up, we had that happen. So it's worth mentioning. MIDI controls, it's just like turning a knob. The parameter stays where you leave it. So that's a new fun thing to be aware of. All right, so let me go back to the MIDI control menu, and edit MIDI mapping is another new aspect of the system. So you can create a whole MIDI mapping using learn. You can learn as many parameters as you want. By the time you've learned several parameters, you might want to keep track of them, you might need to change some of them. The edit page shows you a UI that's a lot like the mod matrix, where every mapping has its own separate entry, its own little line item, and it shows you the MIDI CC number, the resolution, whether it's 7-bit or 14-bit, and then the parameter. And because there are so many parameters, like in the mod matrix, we use two variables for that, basically. You pick the module that your parameter is in, and then you pick the parameter. And so from this, in addition to showing you what your mappings are, you can fully edit from here. You can create a new mapping, just like in the mod matrix, by selecting a blank row and pressing the encoder. And so from here, I can manually select a CC number and manually select a parameter that I want to be controlling. So, you know, if you, for whatever reason, you want to create a MIDI mapping, but you don't have your controller hooked up, or you just don't want to fool with it, you can just do it manually here. And additionally, you can go from the editor, you can jump straight into the Learn UI if you do want to quickly learn a CC that comes in. And of course, you can also delete. There's using the delete key on the front panel. If there's a mapping you don't want, you can get rid of it. So yeah, you can fully edit, organize, control, modify, see what your mapping is, all from the Edit Mappings page. And
we've also added like a convenient way of clearing out a mapping. Imagine that you've got like a very large CC map, and you're like, well, there's one particular control that I actually don't want to have doing anything. You can go to Learn MIDI CC, touch that control. It will tell you what it has been mapped to already, and then you can press clear mapping, and now it's gone.
Nice.
Which is a very intuitive way to disable things that you don't want to have happen anymore.
Yes. Okay. All right. I love that we have so many questions, because we do our best to just remember everything and describe it, but it's so helpful to have prompts from people on what they're really curious about. So keep the questions coming. On which level are the MIDI Learn settings saved? And that's basically globally is the answer to that. So when you create a MIDI mapping, it exists at the global level. All the presets will be controlled by that same mapping. And so the next question is sort of the inverse of that. That actually might be a duplicate, but will the MIDI mapping be saved per preset? In 1.1.0, it is a global mapping. And someone would like to know if the oscillator OLEDs are going to become dynamic. Are they going to animate? Probably not. In the initial, it may come down to just the performance overhead of what it would take to do that. There are a lot of important things going on inside this synthesizer in order to respond in a music, in real time, essentially, to be totally musically responsive and a great performance instrument. Animating pixels on a screen is not the most important task, musically speaking. And so if the bandwidth to do that for these 3 little screens would be too much, would impact the performance of this thing as a musical instrument, then that's not acceptable. So as of now, it looks like it would be too computationally intensive to have 3 real-time video displays on what, ultimately the sound that this thing makes is the most important. So we may have to sacrifice that piece of eye candy, or we decided to, when we were designing this instrument, decided to sacrifice that piece of eye candy for the sake of musical responsiveness. So
there's also the problem of this being polyphonic and which oscillator to display.
That's a really good point.
Just like the LFO rates, it's the same problem. It's an indicator of what the speed is, but we can't display all 16 LFO rates on one LED that is blinking.
Right, or all 48 oscillators using. So what do you display? As of now, these things are they're guidelines, they're indicators of the kind of thing that's going on. But real-time display has its issues. Absolutely, we can demo recording CCs in Ableton. We have a laptop with Ableton set up right here, and we can go ahead and do that. And here you can maybe answer the question, can different user spaces have different MIDI mappings?
Yes, just like, so the question is, can different user spaces have different MIDI mappings saved in them? Just like any global setting, a user space preserves everything that is in there, including the CC mappings.
Yep.
And additionally, in the next version, you will have the ability to save multiple CC mappings per user space and recall them as you see fit.
Right, so within your user space that you normally use in a future update, that's where you can have as many MIDI mappings as you like, easily accessible through the settings menu. All right, so I don't know if we have the technology to show the laptop screen or not. Apparently we do. Awesome, go team. Okay, so yes, you can record and play back MIDI CCs. Did you just set this to? Okay, so I'm going to go to MIDI control output and set it to CC, or to MIDI map, rather.
Yeah.
So MIDI map, that means that if I create a mapping and then I turn the knob, that is the MIDI CC that's going to be set out to Ableton. So you really do get that nice bidirectional control.
So the difference between how it behaved in version 1.0 is that with the MIDI CC map, it sends out the value of the parameter, which could be per synth and which could also be related to other things that are going on in the preset. While in version 1.0, the CCs that were sent out were the actual knob position.
Right, just the position of the physical knob, which was like, it was a minimal implementation. And now we have, extended and enhanced and made it more musical and more like what you would expect it to be. So I'm running Ableton Live 10 here. I've got USB MIDI hooked up. So I'm receiving MIDI from the one, and I'm sending MIDI to the one. So in this clip, very simply, if we want to show recording into live, we can do that. And I'll just arm recording on this.
I have no mapping set up.
So. Okay, we have no mapping set up, so I should probably map something first. I was going to show things in a slightly different order. It doesn't really matter either way. But if you create a new MIDI clip, you can manually put MIDI controls into Ableton Live. And if you haven't done that before, you click on the little modulations button. Show hide envelopes is what they call it. And under envelopes, you can choose MIDI control. And then you have this drop-down list with every available MIDI CC. So you can pick any one you like. And you can now draw values here for that MIDI control. And I'm using the breakpoint tool. There's also the pencil tool. You can get as elaborate as you want. And the idea behind this, working this way is, although I don't have this, let's imagine you have an arrangement. You've got like a really nice, riser or breakdown, or there's some part of your track where you want some fireworks to happen in terms of the parameters moving around. So you would select that part of your timeline or that clip, and then create, you choreograph what kind of cool manipulations and modulations, most software producers are familiar with doing this in the plugin domain. You pull up your parameters, you wiggle them all around, it's awesome. This lets you do all of that same stuff in hardware. So what I'm doing right now is simply just to create a mapping. I've selected MIDI CC14, I'm sending that out to the Moog One. If I now go into learn mode, I probably shouldn't keep beating up on filter cutoff, but you know how it is. All right, so state variable filter cutoff. If I hit play here, then that CC that I created has now been learned. MIDI CC14 is now associated with the state variable filter cutoff. So let's imagine that I had some notes here. We don't have to imagine because I can draw them in. So here are some notes, and here's that envelope. And if I hit, let me make that a little bit longer. Okay. All right, so if I go back to my envelopes here, I think what I'll actually do, I'm armed for recording, so it's possible.
Let's play it first, maybe, see what this does.
Okay, sure. I'll just draw a little bit more motion so you can see something happening. And the basic idea here is just to move the cutoff of the filter around using this automation lane. That was a terrible resolution. I apologize to all the musicians in the audience.
Which is where 14-bit CC support is nice.
Oh, not that resolution. I meant chord resolution.
Oh, chord resolution.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the resolution of the MIDI was okay. It was the note that it was ending on. Apologies for the uncertain wording. All right. But that's that. And if I create and record a new clip and I turn this knob, then all of my knob wigglings are going to be recorded to that clip, in theory. But they probably weren't, because I might need to choose
envelopes, maybe?
What?
You're showing the notes. I don't know.
Hey, you're right. Thank you. Yes, that was just a display issue. So as soon as I grabbed the knob and started wiggling it around, that performance on the hardware is recorded in live and can be played back, can be edited. So you can now use this as essentially a fully featured controller for your DAW, in addition to an incredibly lush analog instrument that will blow all your plugins out of the water, or so we hope. So that is sending and receiving CCs in Ableton. It's really easy. If you have a mapping set up, you can just record. It'll all go in there. It'll all play back. You can manually create modulations in your software for any parameter that you map.
So one thing to note is, by default, if you haven't changed any of your settings, the mappings will follow what the synths are being set up as MIDI channels, which is MIDI channel 1. Now, if you would want to have individual control over the 3 synths, then you can go to the MIDI I/O settings and scroll down, and you can set the MIDI in route and MIDI out route to per synth, and then individually select a MIDI channel for the 3 synths. And from that point onwards, it will respect that MIDI channel, both going out and coming back in, allowing you to individually control the same parameter for each synthesizer.
That's right. So you could have synth 1 on channel 1, synth 2 on channel 2, synth 3 on channel 10 if you want, and all of those controls will be channelized so that they only control the synth that you want them to. The same CC number on channel 1 will control synth 1, on a different channel would control a different synth if you set up the MIDI route to be per synth.
Exactly.
Okay, let's see. I think that we've covered a lot. That was the new MIDI control, I'm pretty sure. I think that's all the settings. Yep, let's just double check. We've got control output, receive MIDI clock, and receive MIDI start stop have been there. Okay, so continuing on in the list of new things in version 1.1, one thing that we've done that people have already started reporting back how happy they are with it is that we improved and smoothed the response to pressure, to aftertouch, on the Moog One physical keyboard. So for performers that use aftertouch, it was functional, but now it's really expressive, and it's musical, and it's smooth, and it's got a nice curve to it. I guess we can just set up a modulation that shows that. I'm going to do something that's not filter cutoff this time.
Okay, well, you go for it.
Okay, so just very simply, I'm going to send an LFO to oscillator 1 frequency, and then I'm going to add pressure control to that. So there's aftertouch, set the amount to 100%, and
that's it.
There we go. So this sound will now get wiggly in response to aftertouch. And if I make that a lot faster, then it'll sound a little bit different. Not necessarily the prettiest sound in the world, but for example, we can just go to the mod matrix, and instead of that controlling oscillator 1 frequency, we can tell it to control something else, like mixer level for oscillator 1. Oh, well, that wasn't the best choice. See, this is what happens when you just do things live and on the fly. You try things.
You can hear that it works.
Yep, you can hear that it works. So, okay, we'll use the modulation envelope. Let's see what that does.
It's not hooked up to anything else. Yeah.
Anyway, point being, aftertouch works great. We can also, I was trying to be fancy, like, oh, I'll use it to control the amount of yet another parameter, blah, blah, blah. We'll not do that. So, I'll just make this very simple. get rid of that.
Delete.
Thank you.
So in our ongoing effort and intent to improve the capabilities of the Moog One, this is also the first step of improving the aftertouch. We have other updates planned that will allow you to tweak it more towards your preference.
That's right. Yeah. So there is now one smooth and nice performance curve, but further depth of adjustment to where you can get it to match your style, how hard you want to press, all of those things. There's room for that, and that's in the plans as well. But it's leaps and bounds above where it was, and it's going to get even better, which is sort of the story of the Moog One as a whole.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on through the list of new well, okay, hang on.
Questions?
We have more questions. Yay, keep them coming. Local control on-off. Can you take that one?
It's not in there at the moment, but it's also on our roadmap. So we're looking into it, and it's going to be there in one of the future updates.
That's right. In one of my roles here at Moog is that I am Moog's representative at the MIDI Manufacturers Association, which is the industry group that maintains and develops MIDI itself. And so we have a very strong focus on MIDI, on supporting MIDI to the best of our ability and really making the most of it as a musical technology. So all of these things like local control, like per note control, all the best things that MIDI can do, we want to support and continue. Sure. We're aware of it and it's in the plans, and so we keep we develop it as we can. We work our way through the list of cool things.
Yep. Is there a way to force an auto-tune or even a reboot without toggling the power switch? No, that is not something that the Moog One can do.
No, I would argue that for live performers, it's probably a good thing that you can't remotely reboot the instrument, because somebody would make mischief with that.
Well, by accident.
Exactly. Yeah. No, the Moog One stays on, and as far as auto-tune, the Moog One is a little bit different than vintage, the first digitally controlled analog synths, where there had to be a button right on the panel to retune it because it was gonna get weird while you were performing with it. The stability and precision of the Moog One is such that the state of tuning that it's in, once it's turned on and warmed up, it's not going to change in the middle of your performance. There's there would be nothing to be gained by retuning it in the middle of your set, for instance.
We have a lot of ongoing logic and processes going on that maintain your tuning during the operation of the Moog One, making that auto-tune not necessary.
Yeah, although I will say regarding tuning, again, this is something that if you got a Moog One when they very first came out, then you'll know that we have continued to refine and improve the tuning of the instrument as a whole, and that's an ongoing process. Like, there are still ways that we can further enhance and dial in all of the little subtleties. There are hundreds or thousands of individual little adjustments that lead to the intonation of the instrument, and it's gotten better and continues to get better.
Is there an ability to mirror on-screen display on a large TV, a monitor, or iPad?
No HDMI out?
No, we don't have that capability. I'm sorry.
It would be very cool.
It would be cool. Well, maybe something to consider way down the line, but then have a performance display that people can, instead of just showing the parameters, having nice little graphs going on. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea.
Okay, noted. Is it possible to create a MIDI sequence within Logic and have the one perform the sequence?
Totally.
Yes, exactly. 100%. That is one of the main things that you can do.
Just like Amos just did with Ableton Live.
Right.
Created a little sequence, even drew in the automation parameters, and with MIDI CC Learn now, even all those changes to the parameters are being played by the Moog One.
That's right. And so everything that I was doing in Live with drawing automation, recording notes, recording knob movements, I can do all those same things in Logic. and any info on what's planned for the Ethernet port. I think that might still be top secret.
Yep.
I don't think we can tell anyone.
Nope.
All right.
But it's there.
It's there. I can promise you that we are not using it for Bitcoin mining. That is definitely not happening. I promise. All right.
You still had a few things you wanted to show, right?
I think so. Let me think. Oh, yeah, that's right. So another thing that we've added, if you go back to the settings menu, the CV menu, CV inputs and CV outputs. This is, once again, just like the MIDI controls, we have this amazing, mind-blowing specification that we've had since before this instrument was finished that includes everything that we could imagine doing, just the coolest possible stuff. And we're working our way through that. And so that includes CV control as well. It has been the case that the CV inputs could be programmed to have several different functions, both controlling sound parameters and controlling, preset number and sequence number and things like that. The CV outputs have now some new abilities that they can do. If you go to the CV outputs menu, now these settings are saved per preset in case someone is asking about that. So you can choose a source. What is the source of the voltage that's going to be at CV output 1? So there are 4 physical CV output jacks, and each of them is configurable on the CV outputs menu. So I'm going to scroll through the list of sources. These are things that can currently assert a control voltage that you can use for whatever you want. And you can choose pitch wheel, mod wheel, aftertouch, the XY pad with its pressure, the pad gate, and then several MIDI CCs as well. And these are, a little bit hardwired, so you can choose a MIDI CC number from this list. Are you choosing a MIDI CC number? Is that what's going on here?
I'm just checking what you're doing, and maybe we can control it through the instrument.
Okay.
Or I don't know what the plan was. We haven't rehearsed this one.
Yeah, we haven't rehearsed this. Let's control it through the instrument.
Okay.
The idea here is that we are using the Moog One in this instance as a MIDI to control voltage converter. And what that means is that you can sequence, just like we were drawing in modulations in Ableton earlier, that was controlling parameters internal to the Moog One. If this is a part of a bigger system where you have some other voltage-controlled analog gear, like we do, then that same MIDI CC that you've drawn in as a parameter automation in your sequence, that can be a CV that you can use to control some parameter that's not MIDI controllable, like on the Mother 32 that we have here. There are all of these patch points. The Mother 32 has a little bit of MIDI control. There are a few things that you can send CCs for, but then there's all of this cool stuff that's pure analog, infinite resolution, sounds amazing. The trade-off is you can't control it digitally because it's literally not digital. But you can now, using the Moog One, you can tie that into your whole performance system and have all the same control that MIDI gives you. You can bring that into the analog domain. So right now, I have told the CV out 1 that it should assert a voltage that's associated with MIDI CC number 2. So here it has an instrument that can send MIDI CC number 2.
So one of the functions on the instrument, just to illustrate what is going on here, I was playing notes before where you have these little lights that show you which notes you're playing. You can also set the instrument into CC fader mode, where you get horizontal sliders that will send out CC messages, which is what I'm going to use now to send out CC values, and specifically here's MIDI CC2.
Right. So if I hit play on the Mother, then you'll hear what it can do. Right now I have this is the control voltage coming out from the Moog One. I'm sending that to LFO rate for the moment. And the LFO is doing some audio rate pulse width modulation thing that sounds like this. So. And that's an example of a parameter that there's no other way to control it than with a CV. And by using the Moog One's CV outputs, mapping those to a MIDI, you've brought all of those voltage controllable parameters integrated into your studio setup with MIDI control with the Moog One. And that's that. And of course, you also have other sources, such as on the Moog One itself, all of its controllers that I mentioned earlier can be translated directly to control voltage. And so we are planning on, that's the first taste of what you can do with the CV outs. Whatever you're thinking, like, man, I wish it could do this, it's probably on our list already, because we spent a lot of time thinking through what are all the cool things we can do. So they're going to keep coming, so stay tuned for more updates on that. More questions? Yeah. Any progress on expression pedal control of the VCA? That is, we've said this a lot, it's on the list. It is not in this particular update, and I recognize that that is not the ideal for using a traditional expression pedal, especially if you want to fade in individual parts, do volume swells, change the balance of synth 1 versus synth 2. Not yet, but definitely we will not rest until that is a part of the full performance specification. So stay tuned. And I'm not that, I'm thinking out loud here. We may even want to reprioritize what order we do certain things in. That's, yeah.
We do it all the time, so who knows?
All right. Is it possible to manually trigger the sequencer ratchet? Like,
Just like on the Mother.
Oh, yeah. No, not at this time. But, so I mentioned that right now the destinations, the kind of parameters that you can map MIDI to are analog parameters on the voices that are controlled by panel controls. The sequencer is in another category. The sequencer isn't per voice, it's not analog, it's sort of part of the larger global system of the Moog One, and that's a category of parameters that is also on our development list to map MIDI to those things. That will be coming in a future update. And is there any chance to see 0 to 10 volt CV outs? There literally is. That you can do that right now. So I'm on that page. If I scroll down here to CV outputs, you can see out voltage minimum, out voltage maximum. Oh, darn. I was so excited. I thought that we had, I thought that the possible range was -5 to +10. I'm wrong. I was thinking of a different instrument. So that is fixed in hardware. The range is -5 to +5, and that's probably for historical reasons because older Moog instruments pitch CVs are -5 to +5 instead of 0 to 10, and we kind of owe it to ourselves to be compatible with our own instruments. Long story short, I think that +5 volts is the maximum that the hardware will support. If I'm wrong, I will issue a correction.
Yeah, we'll check it.
And does the Moog One support Spectrasonics Omnisphere 2.6? Interesting that you would ask that. I wonder if is that someone from Spectrasonics writing in? Probably not, but I have been in email conversation all this week with Spectrasonics about exactly that. And the answer is not right this minute, because it's a big job to do the intense level of support that they offer. And in fact, we probably need to do another little development sprint specific to the Spectrasonics hardware profile concept, because it's a very specific thing, it's very deep, it's awesome, and everybody involved would like to see us support that. But it's a project, I can say it's a project that I'm currently in discussions with Spectrasonics about right now. We will get there.
Yeah, well, we want that to be awesome. We don't want it to just be latched on and just happen to work. We want it to be really fully realized and feel amazing.
Exactly. So we don't want to release an incremental, this sort of supports Spectrasonics Omnisphere hardware profiles, but it's not going to be a great experience. We want it to be a great experience. So we'll get there. It'll take us a little time. Pardon me. So, all right. Was that all the things? Have we?
I think we've gone through it all. Wow.
I mean, we're probably leaving. We might not be leaving something out. That might be all the things. So this is once again, this is one additional installment towards the fully realized, fully amazing everything that we intend to do.
One thing that is a side effect of all the work we did in this release for MIDI support, because we had to be able to receive all those NRPNs and MIDI CC messages and be able to do MIDI to CV output in a resolution that sounded musically nice. we've actually improved that whole architecture. And the side effect, which we were hoping for, was that it would improve the MIDI clock sync stability,
Oh, nice.
which it has.
Yes,
So
that
a
is
few
well worth
people
mentioning.
have been writing in about that, saying that they're super happy and that it's now as stable as they want it to be.
Fantastic. That's well worth mentioning. Yeah, so that's another dynamic of continuing to work on this instrument, is that we're not just putting in new features, we're refining and fine-tuning the performance of the instrument as a whole system. And we're always paying attention to that because we're musicians and we want to create virtuosic musical instruments that support your best performances. So we're always looking for enhancements and improvements and streamlining in that way.
Yep.
All right, so I think this concludes the talking about nerdy technical stuff portion of the live stream. Thanks for hanging with us. You all are amazing. And the next thing that's going to happen is, I have no problem saying much more amazing than us talking about technical stuff. Lisa Bella Donna, an amazing musician, is here in town. The Moog in Asheville, North Carolina is having its grand opening this week. We're having all kinds of synthesizer, well, I say we, it's the Bob Moog Foundation. Props to the Bob Moog Foundation. Come to Asheville, visit the Moog, it's amazing. And if you happen to already be in Asheville, then you've seen luminaries like Herb Deutsch, Lisa Bella Donna, all kinds of cool people here in town. We're fortunate that Lisa is bringing her magic to the Moog Sound Lab and is going to be shredding these amazing new presets that I think I mentioned in passing at the start of this. If you're just tuning in, the Moog One v1.1 update also includes 50 amazing classic Moog presets designed for the Moog One. Honestly, I've heard things that I had never heard out of this synth engine before, which I love. That's the best. One of the best things about creating a complex musical instrument is that people will surprise you with things you didn't know it could do. And this sound set includes sounds that do that for me. And Lisa is a brilliant player, and she's going to make this instrument sing.
So if you want to get those classics sounds, they're a separate download that you can get from the website after registering. So they're not shipped with the 1.1 update.
Thanks for the clarification.
Some people have been wondering about that. It is a separate step, and then you will get your download, and you can import them just like any other presets that would be available to you.
So I should say this new preset pack is a free download from Moog.
Yes.
Register your instrument, and you can get the download link. And any Moog One owner can load those sounds up and go to town with them. So 5-ish minutes or so, we're going to do a little bit of a switchover. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to go, but stay tuned, and Lisa Bella Donna is going to come blow your mind in just a few minutes.
Thanks so much for watching.
Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for your
have a great day.
questions. Thanks for hanging.
Yeah, bye.
Should I just keep going, or is that how we do this? I'm going to do some of this here in a minute. Everybody loves this one. I love this one. Reprise. Oh, let's see here. Let's find something little. Yeah. This is kind of generic. One of my favorites, though. I love this patch. Okay. My voice is so shot. Does anybody have any? Does anyone have any questions? I guess I should. I can't. Can they hear my voice? My ragged voice? I hope not. I hope that's not happening. I hope they're just super excited. You know, one thing I will say is, you know, the Moog One is so powerful, and it's really so much more than meets the eye when you meet it. And just in the really just a few weeks I've had to really get to explore with it, it is such an inspiring, you know, it's a composer's synth for sure. You know, you could really single-handedly just take this with you to a performance or to any kind of gig where you kind of needed something of everything. This will give it to you. And the possibilities of the way the destinations can patch to certain knobs, it's just amazing. It's so inspiring. And being somebody who's pretty die-hard modular person, and this is basically what that is, just, you know, a little less messy, I guess. And very grateful to get some experience with this. So I hope you guys are enjoying some of these awesome new patches. They're super fun and definitely inspire you to create some of your own classic sounds. Let's see here. Oh yeah, I like this one a lot. And I have to say I really love the eventide effects that are going on in here. This thing is really adds a unique depth. Probably one of the things I think is difficult to really show this thing in, I'll answer that question in just a second. One of the things I think is very special about the Moog One is the headroom, the output. You got 48 oscillators at your disposal, and you know, 16 voices per panel. I mean, you know, what else do you want? You know, you have 3 sequencers or 2 sequencers and an arpeggiator. There's so many possibilities. You can spread voices, you can pan them, anything you wish. You can immediately perform and select each filter or use both, you know, with the envelope to send them to the envelope, which I love that, you know, depending on what mood I get in. But the headroom of this thing is on par with some of the best sounding, powerful, discrete synthesizers out there. Question, how do you approach how you choose sounds, intentional or by feeling? I guess both, you know, depending on, you know, the rotation of my rhythm of things. I like to try to hydrate the musical situation or the listener as much as possible and not stay on one thing for too long, you know, unless it feels right. But I basically try to go from one thing to the other and create a sense of space between them. So hope that answers that question. But yeah, I'm going to play it for a little bit, but if anybody has questions, please, I can see them over here on the screen, so please ask any questions you wish. This is the OB to ladder pad, and it's way sweet. During this pad, I'll show you how awesome it is during this VCA. All these little triangle buttons show you the screen of whatever module that you're about to dial up. And the spreading of the voices, I feel, is really special. You know, it really shows you just how much possibility you have. So let's see what this does. Thank you. Have you played the 8-voice and the 16-voice? Any thoughts? Yes, I have played both, and I mean, I don't know how else to say it. You know, they're both absolutely rich with possibilities, and you really can't go wrong with either or. Having big hands, I love 16 voices because I love to have, and having a sequential mind, I love getting 3 sequences going on this thing. And like I said, it's like a modular system underneath this hood. But I would just say, you know, they're both extremely rich with possibilities, and if you are considering on investing in this amazing instrument, you know, try both. See what works for you and your music. You know, I mean, if you're, you know, just wanting the best pads you can get, you know, things like that, an 8-voice would probably do you great. Or just super fat leads with polyphonic aftertouch, you know, it would be just fine. But 16 voices allows you to really get in there super deep, and you could score a film with this thing and single-handedly. I really believe that. And I've got intentions to do that at some point on this thing. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, 16 voice. Oh, that's a great question. How close to quadraphonic can you get with the mod matrix? You know, I wish I could answer that right now, but I really haven't gotten that deep with it. I haven't had it underneath my hands that long. Mostly what I've been doing over the last couple of weeks is basically just showing the presets, showing how this thing routes to itself, you know, how it can be controlled. So I haven't got that far yet, but hit me up on social media, please, or on Facebook, Lisa Bella Donna 2600, and give me another week or so, and I'll be able to answer that question in great detail. The phase shifter is amazing. Delay is amazing. Here, let me get another patch, and I'll scroll some effects for you. Let's do... That's obviously Eventide Hall. Let's take that off, and now you get to hear a little bit of just the delay, which is really, really lush. let's go from this delay, oh goodness. Let's go to effects type. You know, the tape delay in this is really cool, the ensemble effect. I'm a phaser nut, so I really love a good phaser. This thing has a good one, I love it. Super lush. About phasing on this too, honestly, the best phaser that's in it is what's going on between these two filters. The one Equinox pad I was playing, basically the modulation would hit the filter when I would press my hands down, and it would just make a nice squeezy, gooey, you know, real nicotine stained, you know, phase shifting. But yeah, the chorus on this thing is without chorus, with some of the effects. The tape delay, I'll dial that up. That one's really cool. Excuse my voice. Been a lot. Yeah, this one's sweet. Oh, no, wait. I like this one. That's what the feedback time, 100%. So yeah, that's nice and got some grit. Okay. How long does this thing go? How should I keep going? I mean, I'm all for it. I'm not taking too long, right? Yeah. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna keep going on the, we'll do a little Jupiter stuff. I haven't loved on the roll-in patches yet in here. This is kind of more of the Jupiter vibes. But yeah, we're still, all the sounds that I'm playing are the classics. That's the new classic series stuff. That's stereo chorus, 2 stereo choruses. this is fun. So yeah, this is this patch and the Blade Runner patch is, this thing is really good for showing the multi-timbral possibilities with this. You know, with the 3 different synths. First synth has a sequencer ready to roll, and then pads and mono synth, you know, all 3 different, completely different synthesizers. So this is a fun one. Arpeggiator on the second monophonic voice. listening and tuning in today. All my love and gratitude to Moog Music, Moog Earthquaker Devices. Thank you guys so much.